Hey, welcome to the Doppio podcast. My name is Emil. I'm a filmmaker from New York.
Hi, I'm Renzo. I'm a movie enjoyer, a movie watcher.
Hi, I'm Castleman. I'm a director, filmmaker, uh, cinephile, etc. from Georgia.
Oh man, now we got those introductions out of the way. Sweet. Well, today
Yeah,
we're going to be talking about David Lynch's Dune. A film that has not the best reputation, but we felt it was very fitting to talk about now considering that Dune Part 2 is about to be released to the world. So the three of us got together and decided to all watch the film pretty much on the same day, right? Did we
Yep.
yeah,
all
all,
watch
all
it?
on Tuesday.
All on Tuesday. It's very much a Tuesday kind of movie.
Yeah.
Um, so with that being said, what did you guys think?
Okay. My rating for this movie was 2.5 stars.
Wow.
Yeah. Some say that it's a bit high, but uh, honestly, no. I do think 2.5 is what fits this rating for me. How about you, Joseph? What did you rate this one?
So my rating on this movie is this is the sort of movie when you're watching it, like maybe you have a mental image of the rating you're gonna give it, like at a certain point, and
Mhm.
like up until I'd say the last 40 minutes, this to me was like a 3 star, 3.5 star movie. Uh and then the last 40 minutes happened. Then we'll get into that. And then that dipped it to where I'm about the same as you. I'm a 2.5 out of 5.
Um,
So I
and
think
that,
I'm actually the most positive on this film out of the three of us. I
okay.
actually gave it three out of five.
Ooh.
Um, Honestly, I had heard really, really bad things about this movie, and I really, really expected to come out of it hating it, especially after being on the Dune high that I currently am on.
Mhm.
Um, but honestly, I felt like this movie was a lot more competent than I just expected it to be, and I had a lot of fun just watching Lynch's take on this story. Though I will say the biggest thing I felt in terms of the lynchiness of it all, it definitely felt like he didn't have final cut privileges on this film, which he didn't.
No.
Yeah.
That
I,
could
I
Yeah.
definitely be felt.
if we're starting off positive, I think the first thing I want to say is the score by Toto, which I think is extremely memorable and about on par, and if you ask me, with the Zimmer compositions in the newer movies, because like I don't know, it just like has this very, I mean, classical sort of sci-fi feel to it. At the same time, feeling more 80s and modern, and like I feel like it lends a great deal to the film. I, I do both you feel about the same way on that?
I mean, it's effective. I mean, like, I was at work today and I kept humming the theme, dun, 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 dun. Like, I kept just
Yeah,
humming that. It's a really good score. I found the score to be quite enjoyable to the point when I got home, I was actually listening to the score again because it's a really good score. So, yeah.
I I will say I think you guys definitely pay attention to film scores a lot more than I do.
Mhm.
And I've learned to start like having been friends with you guys as long as I have and having
Mhm.
talked with you guys about movies as much as I have. I've learned to appreciate film scores a lot more because of our
Mhm.
conversations and because of you guys actually going out and noting that. Because I feel like, a lot of my friends back home, I'm from Miami, by the way, but back
Mhm.
home, all my friends, like, they're all music people for the most part. Like they're all artists. However, they, I would go see movies with them, and the score was never something that really ever came up. And I think I'm just not that kind of minded person to like, I'm not gonna like, I'm gonna buy into the experience of just being in the movie, and the score is like simply a tool that the composer and the director have to kind of sell me into that world. But I never not ever. That's a lie. But I rarely find myself like leaving a movie humming it, and honestly, and that's I just find it really cool that you guys can appreciate it on that level, and I'm trying to take more inspiration from that because I mean, man, Renzo
yeah.
really be out here humming the Dune 1984 theme at work.
That's what we do. We skip around our skip around the street, humming the Dune theme, and our lives are better for it. Just across the board, the technical stuff. Like, I love the visual texture of this movie.
Mhm.
I think I'm just a big fan of like sci-fi / fantasy movies from the 80s. Just the not even if like the script is a mess, just the way they look makes it enough for it to be like a comfort zone for me. Um, and especially in terms of this movie, I like the production design a lot. I really just enjoyed looking at this movie,
I mean,
even when it got incomprehensible.
I mean, it
I'm
just
with you. Oh, go ahead,
Oh, sorry
Renzo.
about that. I mean, it just matches with David Lynch's style, in my opinion. Like, it's a match made in heaven. But the thing about it is, like we've mentioned, it doesn't have final cut. You can see like his moments of brilliance with Dune, but you can tell that the studio was like limiting on what he could do with this movie. So yeah.
Particularly whenever it gets into any of the more surreal stuff. Like I think,
Mhm.
by the way, I will mention, I mean, we're going to talk spoilers, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's from
Yeah,
1984. We
it's
can
from the
spoil it.
'84. I'm just saying. I don't know. I mean, just in case anyone hasn't seen this movie yet, and this podcast is the thing that makes them want to watch it.
Mhm.
I'll just say the scenes of Paul drinking the water of life are really fucking cool, and I think anything that Lynch does, where just anything trippier, more surreal, even without Final Cut privileges and like him knowing he didn't have really as much of a hand in the edit uh, as I think he would have liked to, you can feel that just because of the way he shoots a scene, and the way the shots he chose to do, particularly just of. I think about that shot of Paul like floating in space when he takes the water. I've been thinking about that since I watched it. Like that was one of the coolest shots in the movie. But while we're talking about positives, and in terms of trippier sequences, how did you guys feel about the opening of the film? I was a really big fan of it. I really liked the surrealness of Irulan just kind of standing in the void of space and just talking at the viewer, looking direct at the camera. Very Lynchian to me, and I think um, what tried to do the thing where they summarize the world of this big complex narrative, and to varying degrees of effectiveness. I mean, we all
Mhm.
know Dune. We all know Dune, but I feel like, and obviously, most people didn't really get it even with that. But understanding the context somewhat beforehand and looking at the scene, I think it is a really cool introduction to this world. But
I
I
feel
I
like
suppose not. What do you guys think?
as a way to deliver exposition, it works. It's not
Mhm.
like my favorite way to deliver exposition. I feel like you can always do a little more, have a little bit more fun with it. But like as it is, it works. And I guess it sort of establishes Princess Irulan as like she's like basically the narrator for this, and we'll talk about that especially when we talk about the third act of the movie. But I think it establishes things pretty solidly. And like I will say, I it's weird because I will say I didn't start really get into the movie until after the first couple scenes, like where after the first scene that we have of the Emperor and like the big slug guy is like, oh, kill this guy. Um,
Yes.
that scene.
Skill.
I was like, okay, and then when it finally cuts to Paul on Caladan, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. This is when the movie's starting.
Really.
Okay, so I think if we're still on the positive things, aside from one major component, I really enjoyed the first 2/3 of this movie. So like the first
Yeah.
hour 30, I
No,
which
I
is very
actually agree with you on that. I agree with you on that because literally,
I
like
agree.
I on my notes, like literally, I wrote that Lynch was really capturing the feel of the book, and like during the first half of it, like for the most part, and then by the second like half of the movie is just like him going speed run with with this
Yeah.
Dune
I
adaptation.
would almost say it's like it's not even the last half, it's the last third because okay, so I just before we hopped on, I just finished also rewatching Dune 2021.
Mhm.
Um Dune Part 1. It's funny. I was like, because there's a point where it's like, oh wait, because my context with this story, I haven't finished the book. I've only read the half of it that was covered in Dune Part 1, and uh, and of course I had seen Dune Part 1 when it first came out, and before saw that, that was like my only connection to this source material. And then I was like, and I was just watching the movie, and I was like, oh wow, this isn't going to. I expected it because it's covering the entire book in 2.5 hours, as opposed to however long the Villeneuve adaptation will end up being. I was like expecting for it to be like, um, way faster than it was in the first 2/3, but it wasn't. I was like, oh wow, they're actually taking their time. I wonder, like, it's weird because if they're supposed to cover the entire book, and then I'm just like, so. And then when it gets to the point where I can tell, I was like, okay, this is where Dune Part 1 ends, which is a 2.5-hour movie, and then as we know, Dune Part 2 is 2 hours 40 minutes for 45, 47, I don't know, something like that.
46.
Yeah, and then I remember I had this moment. I clicked like the button on my PS5 controller, and just to check how much was left over. And I was pretty much into the movie, so I didn't know how much time has passed. I realized, oh, there are 40 minutes left in this movie, and I'm not kidding. The exact point where the material covered in Dune Part 1 as the Villeneuve version ends in the David Lynch version. There is 40 minutes left in the movie.
Wow.
And that was like, okay. And at this point, I was like, this movie's I'm kind of getting it. Like, there are some parts I don't like. For example, the one major part I didn't like in like the first 2/3, I continued to dislike in the last third. I don't like the Harkonnens in this version. I think they suck. They're awful villains. I don't get it. Like that's my least favorite thing. That's consistent throughout this movie.
Okay, I can get that. I think the I'm gonna call them Harkonnens because I watched the Villeneuve movie first, and that's what they call them. So I'm gonna just continue to go by Harkonnens.
Yeah.
I think they were really silly in this movie, and I think my biggest problem with them was their like costuming. I think I've just gotten used to expecting the Harkonnens to be like more like gothic and like dark and like emo, and I didn't really get that with the Harkonnens in this movie, particularly with the Baron.
Instead, they're homophobic.
Yeah, they do kind of suck in this movie, but I will say Baron and Harkonnen, the Baron is kind of hilarious in this movie. And I think
that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was my entire point. Was I get that?
Yeah, I think my biggest problem with this film, just to finish off that point real quick, my biggest problem with this film, I expected a so bad it's good movie, and I didn't really get that. I felt like there were a lot more competent pieces to this film than I just expected going in. Like, I just didn't like the look of Kyle MacLachlan as Paul. I'm going to be so honest. I was like, it just looks wrong to me. Something about this guy in this role just felt wrong. But I was so wrong. I really, really liked Kyle MacLachlan in this movie. Yeah. I thought he did a really, really great job as Paul. I thought all the actors were honestly, for the most part, pretty great in this movie.
But do you know the best part of this movie? Do you know who is the best part? Sting. Sting as Spade.
Oh yeah.
I mean, having seen like Dune Part 2 and Austin Butler and Sting both have the sauce in playing Fade Rotha.
Okay,
and
but here's the
thing.
Both
got the sauce. Mm-hmm. They both got the sauce.
Sting's as Fade was one of the, I guess, few hyped up bits for this movie. I was honestly disappointed.
Really?
He doesn't do anything until the final 5 minutes.
Yeah, he's really not
nothing.
He's not in this movie that much, really.
Yeah, no, the most iconic moment of him is when he like walks through the steam and he's naked except for like a little wing thing on his crotch, and it's like that's all he does. He doesn't do anything. It's just Sting hanging around, doing his thing, I guess. And like,
fun fact, he was wearing a G-string as well.
Okay, well,
thank you for providing us that information, Renzo.
Hey, sources from IMDb.
I mean, I actually saw Sting in concert earlier this year, and I kind of wish I had seen this movie before that, so I'd be like, oh, that guy up on stage, he was in a G-string in the movie Dune from 1984.
Just pulled up to the Fade Rotha concert.
Yeah, me and my dad going to the Fade Rotha concert, yeah. If he doesn't show up with the little winged crotch piece, we demand our money back.
Apparently,
God.
Patrick Stewart didn't even know that that Sting was a musician. He didn't even know.
Ah.
Why didn't Sting do any of the music for this movie?
Oh, true, true.
That's true. One other
Like,
thing I thought was kind of interesting about this film is that I think it was quite accurate to the books, but it was like accurate in like at least the first part. It was
yeah,
accurate in ways in like different ways to the movie. Like I think I thought it was neat that they included the little scene of Paul sitting with his back to the door, and then they come, and then all the older people come in and they're like, "Hey, don't do that." And he's like, "Fuck you, I will."
I
Anyways,
mean, the one that you mentioned earlier, the one that you mentioned earlier with like Irulan, like the narration, I will say it was reminiscent of the book. Actually, you know how like in each chapter of Dune, like it starts with a Irulan narration. So I was like, oh, I was like,
yeah.
at least David captured that feel of it. Like I said, like for the most part of the book, David did capture the feel that I was getting when I was reading the book. So I do think that's like my biggest testament to like my positive sentiments with this movie.
Yeah.
I, Pretty much. I will say that. I will agree with that. Um I honestly I'm pretty sure through this conversation we've gone through all my positives. I'm not gonna lie. Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think if I have any more, but
Um
honestly, I
are
also
we
like Kyle MacLachlan as Paul.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah. So most of my, aside from the villains, our lovely redheaded villains, um, which I just want to note, it's kind of funny how like the Harkonnens in this have like an almost Scottish feel to them with all the redheads and shit. And then in Villeneuve's Dune, House Atreides is marked with bagpipes. And as someone with
listen,
Scottish ancestry, I appreciate. I guess which one I prefer.
listen, as someone with no Scottish ancestry, I also prefer that one.
Oh no,
As someone who's Asian, I was done wrong with Dr. Yui in this one.
oh boy, your only
Uh,
representation was nowhere to be seen.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you,
but
Dr. Yui.
if
Oh
if if
man.
we're done with the positive part,
Yeah.
um, I again, aside from the villains, it's the last 40 minutes for me goes completely to shit. Like
Mm.
it is. Chani has 3 lines in this entire movie. Like it's
Yeah.
like the voiceover says more about her than she says about herself. It's insane.
Isn't most of her
Like
scenes also like just Chani and Paul kissing for the first part?
Mm.
yeah, no, it's like oh they fell deeply in love. Oh, okay, thanks for telling us instead of showing us. Thank you, visual medium. Oh wow, this is
Yeah.
so much better than just sitting down and reading a book. Um, it's like
Um
the last 40 minutes has like they just say something insane and move on. There's no time to process anything. It's like, oh yeah, and it's like, and it says, oh yeah, and then Paul's mom gave birth to a kid who was aging faster. Anyway, what? It was like, here's the thing. I was almost worrying that this part of the film would spoil Dune Part 2 for me because like I haven't finished the book, so I sort of had to accept that okay, the first time I'm going to experience the second half of Dune will be in this movie. But I have no worries. I have no I don't know what happens. To me as far as I'm concerned because I'm the only person in this podcast who hasn't seen Dune Part 2 yet. I don't know what happens in that movie. Because the last 40 minutes of this then gave me barely any information than I could already had figured out. Like, holy shit.
well,
You're missing.
I think one man's trash is another man's treasure because I think I think it's hilarious. It's a hilarious way of filmmaking, and I was in for it because it's just the last like like scenes of the movie. Just every line of dialogue, it just gets like exponentially more insane, and I'm here for it. Honestly, okay. Let's talk specifics here. How do you guys feel about that ending? About the ending of the film?
I love the end
Because
credits.
you like the credits.
Low key, the craziest thing about the entire movie was the end credits.
Yeah, right.
Like that was the most insane. It was like I was not expecting an end credits that looked like the end credits to Top Gun. Like what the fuck?
Yeah,
I
after
bet,
what just happened.
I
Okay,
bet David Lynch thought of that.
maybe he did have Final Cut privileges. No, but that was a joke, by the way. So I think the idea of it is really interesting to me. I think Paul dying and becoming one with everyone on Arrakis, and then becoming one with the planet, and then just them floating away. Kind of nuts, man. Kind of nuts.
Wait, what?
Wait, sorry. Am I?
That's the ending to Tartakovsky's.
Okay. Wait. Did I forget the ending of this movie? Wow. Oh my god, that's so funny. Wow. I was I guess I'm not gonna cut this out of the podcast. I guess Jodorowsky's Dune just gaslit me into thinking that was the real ending. And you know what? I'll tell myself that it's the ending.
No, actually, I was about to say Jodorowsky's Dune, which all three of us also watched. I gotta say that I love that ending. Great ending. Great ending.
I do love. Yeah. We all watched this the same day.
Yeah.
No, I watched Jodorowsky's Dune earlier today.
Oh,
you watched it today, yeah. But we all watched them with pretty small periods of time between.
Within 24 hours of each other.
Within 24 hours of each other, yeah. So I don't know. I guess I've just been thinking about Jodorowsky's Dune, and I just gaslit myself into thinking that was the ending. Wow. Okay. What was the ending to this movie actually? I remember it was also some crazy. It was also something crazy. I just don't remember what it was. No, you know what, Castleman?
It rains. Here, I'm going to read the final sentence of this. After killing Fade, Paul demonstrates his newfound powers and fulfills the Fremen prophecy by causing rain to fall on Arrakis.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. I remember now.
Honestly, my favorite moment in this first episode, changing the ending of David Lynch's Dune to Jodorowsky.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like that ending would fit the David Lynch version better than what we got.
I just like that moment in Tartakovsky's Dune where are we saying this right? What is it? Jodorowsky. We've been saying Tartakovsky's Dune.
I've been saying Jodorowsky.
I've been saying Jodorowsky.
That is my mistake. Okay. Anyway, he's still alive actually.
Yeah, he is.
Do you think he's seen Denis Villeneuve's Dune?
I don't think he cares for it, honestly.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah,
well, I just remember the moment from the end of Jodorowsky's Dune where he said, "Oh yeah, then I went to go see the David Lynch version and it was shit."
Oh yeah, I remember that. I honestly that documentary was really, really good.
I agree.
I'm glad I actually watched it.
Yeah, I would definitely rank it higher than this film, than Dune '84.
Definitely.
Yeah, Dune was. I don't know. Go ahead, Kafka.
I mean, this movie was so good, right? This David Lynch movie, it's a masterpiece.
I had a good time watching it. I did have a good time watching it. I will say.
See, the thing is, this movie, despite how there are some David Lynch elements in this one, it just hurts, man. Like, having seen like a lot of David Lynch's work, just to see him not have full creative control just sucks, man. Because you know what this guy could do. You know what this legend could do. But having him at like an unlimited capacity and not him going forward, can you imagine like if he had all the creative control that he had? Dude, this might have been as good as like Jodorowsky's Dune concept, like what he wanted for this movie. But it's a tragedy. But we already have like a good Dune adaptation, thankfully. So
And hey, I think all of this was worth it to get Villeneuve's Dune Part 2.
true. So yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's pretty much it.
I couldn't feel as much happy. That's the reason why I don't think I could give this like I couldn't give this 3 stars because even if the filmmaker like he's not happy with the movie, like he even thinks like this is his greatest failure. So it's like I can't really love something as much that he like didn't put himself into. So
Now, is it
that's the
funny
reason
that
why.
this is only the second David Lynch movie I've ever seen?
Wait, really?
No way.
Yeah, I've only seen the only David Lynch movie I'd seen before this was Eraserhead.
Dude, do you
Wow.
want a good one with Kyle? Like, dude, Blue Velvet.
Yeah,
He
Blue
barely
Velvet.
That's one I've heard a lot about. But yeah, no, I've just never seen. I don't know. I've just never gotten around to it. I saw Eraserhead. I like Eraserhead. I just haven't seen the rest of his movies. Speaking of which, after seeing Jodorowsky's Dune, I really want to watch The Holy Mountain because I've heard a lot about that movie too.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, I put that on my Letterboxd watch list after.
Yeah, I'm
That is a
less
movie.
interested in seeing El Topo because apparently that one is just a naked child walking around. From what I saw in that documentary, which I don't know. I want to.
his son. His son
Yeah,
walking around.
who was apparently supposed to be his Paul. Like, okay, so if we're trying to talk about Jodorowsky's Dune, that movie sounds like it would have either been a huge mess, like an absolute nightmare, or the greatest movie of all time, and nothing in between.
I was telling Renzo earlier that I feel like I was pretty on board with everything he was telling me until I found out that he wanted it to be like between 10 and 12 hours.
So are you
Like
on board for where Duke Leto is castrated and Lady Jessica impregnates herself by taking a drop of her blood and sticking it in her uterus?
dude, honestly, I think that kind of goes hard.
I mean, I wasn't against it. I was just like, okay, that's a take. I was like, I'd have to see how he was doing that, to be honest.
Is
Maybe I'm a simple
Zack
man.
Snyder? Is Jodorowsky
Is he Snyder?
is Jodorowsky the 70s Zack Snyder?
I feel like that's
man.
insulting to Jodorowsky. Come on.
Yeah, that is insulting to Jodorowsky.
No, but do imagine like if this was like in this time, do you think he'll have a cult?
Jodorowsky
oh yeah, because Jodorowsky did build a cult. Or as I described it after I finished the movie, it's like Luffy gaining his crew in One Piece. It's like I need my warriors. I'm sorry, he was like giving Luffy vibes when he was saying that.
I was gonna say I don't think it's Luffy vibes. I kind of he gave me energy of the Takaya from Persona 3.
Luffy meets Takaya from Persona 3.
I you know what? I'll co-sign that. I'll co-sign that with you guys. Yeah. So do we have anything left to say on Dune 1984 that we have not already said?
I liked most of the performances, but I will say I wasn't really crazy about Lady Jessica in this movie.
Really?
Yeah, especially in the part like when they're on the rocks. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think Rebecca Ferguson is definitely a way better Jessica.
Definitely.
I mean, because I feel like, honestly, my favorite Gurney I've only seen Dune Part 1, but I like Patrick Stewart as Gurney a lot.
How was that training with the shield? Watching that for the first person.
Oh dear. Okay, yeah, that's
dude. The Minecraft bodies is so funny.
Yeah,
so funny. That was rough. Not gonna lie.
Also, I enjoyed it, honestly.
Also, what a waste of Duncan, Idaho.
Waste of Duncan, Idaho. What a waste of Duncan, Idaho.
With that,
yeah, Duncan Idaho has like 2 scenes in that movie. It's like his introductory scene, and then he dies.
I read on Twitter somewhere that someone said that they're pretty sure Frank Herbert was was in love with a man named Duncan from Idaho, with the way this man like keeps doing shit in these books. I wouldn't be surprised.
Did he
But
envision Jason Momoa?
maybe I love Jason Momoa in that role. I will say I do think
It's one of his
I do
best
think
roles.
he is. Yeah, that is one of his best roles for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, on Dune 84, I feel like I've been too nice in this movie. I need to start saying bad things about it. I want to say at least one bad thing about this movie. Yeah, like I'll give a silly little anecdote. So I've been reading the Dune book. I'm currently on page 212. And it was just to talk about the pacing of this movie. I was about an hour and 10 minutes in or something, and I just like paused it. And I had realized that up until that point in the book or in the film, everything that I had seen in the film had already been covered in the book up until where I had read.
Mm.
And Dune is a book that's like 700 pages, at least the edition that I'm reading. So I just think there's something silly about the fact that I was an hour and 10 minutes into this movie and I was still pretty much where I was in the book.
Yeah. Well, as I said, like the movie just exponentially speeds up. Like when you're making an adaptation of like a really long book, and say you have an hour and 20 minutes like this movie did to do it, you kind of gotta like. It's weird because like say, I think an example let's say take is that's a movie that's adapting a book of about the same length and is about the same length. Let's say Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is adapting like an 850 page book or whatever. But this is like if that movie like adapted up to the point where like I don't know Christmas time, and then you had 40 minutes, then you had like 30 minutes left in the movie. It's insane, like because usually when you're doing an adaptation, you want to like space things out, like you want to make cuts and truncations throughout the entire story, not just the second half. Because it's weird. Because again, I think the first half of this movie is treating things like it has enough time to take its time, and then the last half is like trying to make up for how much time the first 2/3 took.
Yeah,
it's like a little lesson in adaptation there. Like, know the time you have and use it wisely.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing was that they didn't know how much time they had. Apparently, there's like 4 hours of footage that they shot. There's like a 4 hour cut or something that Lynch had worked on, and it was just clearly chopped up in the editing room because they needed a 2.5 hour movie for theaters.
And even
but my question is, even with editing, why did they? It's like they took that 4.5 hour cut and took the first 2 hours, mostly as it was, and then just completely obliterated the second 2 hours.
Now, this is not based on any knowledge. This is just purely me talking out of my ass. But I have to imagine that they probably just kept the material that they thought was best in the film, or at least whoever that the studio hired to edit the film. Probably they just were like, yeah, this stuff is these are the things that, from what we shot, that will be the most marketable and the things that would probably sell the most as a product. The things that'll get people in theaters, that make it as less weird as possible. At least I would have to imagine. But that might be giving them too much credit. Maybe they just thought this was a good cut of the movie. I don't know. I wasn't in that editing room. I wasn't even alive yet.
Yeah, it's just strange because I mean, especially as someone whose main exposure to this was the first half of the book going in, it's just odd. I mean, I understand how you like the ideas of like the more surreal stuff in the second half, but like I don't
at least
know.
Visually, I will say just visually.
No,
visually,
I mean,
was nice
I
to
think
watch.
the movie is cool to look at the entire way through. I think it's more about the quality of storytelling that like takes an insane dip because it turns from from a movie adaptation of a book to like the spark notes of the book, like the just it turns from an actual adaptation into a book report basically, and it's just disappointing because I
It
feel
feels
like
like
if
oh, sorry. It
no
because it
I
for
just
me. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
I just feel like we would. I'm not saying this is a lot. Would have been a masterpiece, but I think it would have been a solid movie if like that last 40 minutes had an extra 40 minutes to breathe. If this was a 3-hour movie instead.
So I'll ask you guys this question: before you watched the film, what were your expectations going in? Like, did you expect to love it, hate it, be somewhere in the middle, so bad it's good? What did you expect going in, and how did this film, after seeing it, did it meet those expectations?
I expected it to be my. I expected it to be not as satisfying as it could be. I mean, when I was watching the movie, like I told you, like I was watching the first hour of this movie, I said I was pretty okay with it. Like it's kind of getting all the beats that I want, but then like it just shifts into a Wikipedia summary of like the of an adaptation of a book, and a book that is so complex, that it is so like rich, and you just speed it through. It just won't hit. Like no matter how much you set up everything, how matter how much you like feel that okay, this is getting somewhere. But if you rush it, it's never gonna work. And that was my feeling with this movie. Like with this movie, yeah, it didn't live up to what I was expecting
I
going in.
see.
I I think this movie. I'll be honest. Going in, if we had like a pre-rating rating, which I would have expected to rate this, I would have expected to rate this exactly what I ended up rating it. Because I was aware that it's a movie that was reviled back in the day, but then has come to have a cult following, and I know my usual reaction to those type of movies are it's not bad, but not good. And well, again, aside, and my only surprise was how much I enjoyed the first 2/3, but then by the end, I was basically back to exactly where my expectations led.
So we ended up back where he started.
Yep.
Um, well, I would say I think I expected to like it a lot less. I expected it to feel like more of a slog. But that first hour and a half, as we have all pretty much agreed on, was fairly solid. Um, but yeah, then that second half it does definitely take a dip in quality and pacing. Um, so with that being said, I believe I've wrapped up all my notes. Do you guys have anything else to say on Dune 1984?
My rating's still the same, 2.5 stars. I'm not changing that.
I don't
Sorry,
think they
David.
ever said desert power in the movie, so that's a no go.
Just because of that, I might have to lower my score to 2.5.
Wow, then
I don't
hey,
know.
we're overall perfectly balanced as all things should be.
True.
Ah,
Gentlemen,
yes, we are a hive mind. We are all supposed to have the exact same opinions on movies.
You know,
we're the Bene
as
Gesserit at this
Gurney
point.
would be proud of us.
Yeah, Gurney would be
Gurney would.
proud.
All right. Well, the rating has just been officially changed, and I'm gonna edit an addendum that I forgot the ending of this movie.
Change the ending. You changed the
Yeah, I was
narrative.
about to say maybe you should lower your rating if you actually if you thought
Yeah.
the ending was different than it actually was. Because honestly, I would give
I
this 3 stars if it had the ending for Jodorowsky's Dune.
Dude, I don't know what came over me, but I just like had the image from the movie from Jodorowsky's Dune of like the planet turning green and flying through space, and I was like, oh yeah, that's from Lynch's Dune. I guess it just overrode the other ending in my brain.
Yeah,
Well, that's pretty much all I have to say on this movie. So I think that we should wrap things up here.
I'm in agreement with
Um,
that.
yeah, I mean, we're not wrapping it up because I specifically don't have anything else to say. I think we're wrapping it up because we all don't have anything else to say on this film. We're at the point
Oh,
where we're talking about the other movie we watched today. So,
okay. All I have
Well,
to
I think
say
we knew we
left.
would end up talking about Jodorowsky's Dune at the same time because
Yeah,
it's like an almost interesting tale of two movies. You know, the one that happened and then the one that didn't.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it all leads to one other film, right? The one that
so
we're
one other
all
film,
like, Dune Part 2. Anyway, you all
Anyway,
should watch it.
Dune Part 2. You guys should
I
watch
hope
it.
to see
Yeah.
it very soon because I was supposed to see it tomorrow, but I won't be able to. But it's all good.
We will be having that discussion. We will be
We
having that discussion.
There will be a
Anyway,
Dune Part 2 discussion. Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening and for joining us on the Dopio podcast, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
all
Bye-bye.
right, bye.
There it is. There it is.